You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. The purpose of schedule management is to build, communicate, and control reliable schedules that stakeholders can trust. A schedule is not just a set of dates. It is a model of how the project will flow, showing relationships, dependencies, and assumptions. This toolkit provides structure to create credible schedules that survive scrutiny and support decision-making. Outcomes include visible logic that stakeholders can follow, defendable dates backed by clear assumptions, and predictable adjustments when changes occur. Whether working in predictive, agile, or hybrid modes, schedule discipline remains essential. The artifacts may differ, but the principles are the same: clarity of logic, honesty in estimates, and visibility of progress. A strong schedule produces outcomes that matter to both teams and executives. Stakeholders gain confidence when they see how milestones are connected, rather than just hearing dates. Teams benefit when they understand the flow of work and can anticipate upcoming dependencies. A credible schedule allows early detection of slippage, giving managers time to act before deadlines collapse. Predictability is the hallmark of schedule discipline. On the exam, stems that describe missed milestones, conflicting calendars, or opaque logic test whether the project manager created a defendable, integrated schedule. Correct answers emphasize transparency, logic, and predictability over optimistic promises. The toolkit applies across delivery modes. Predictive projects often use detailed schedules with dependencies, milestones, and baselines. Agile projects rely on cadence, backlog order, and velocity to predict delivery windows. Hybrid projects combine both, using time-boxed sprints or iterations mapped against milestone forecasts. Tailoring ensures that regardless of method, the project has credible dates that can be defended and adjusted systematically. PMI emphasizes that a schedule must be more than a document. It is a living model that informs decisions daily. On the exam, distractors that suggest backlog means no schedule or baseline means no flexibility are incomplete. Inputs and assumptions shape every schedule model. At the foundation are scope documents or work breakdown structures in predictive projects, or product backlogs in agile contexts. Calendars provide working and non-working days, including holidays, weekends, and planned shutdowns. Constraints may include immovable deadlines, compliance reviews, or blackout windows where no work can occur. Resource assumptions, such as availability of specialized staff or equipment, influence activity sequencing. Interfaces and external dependencies must also be captured early, since they often drive critical path uncertainty. On the exam, stems about schedule slippage due to missed dependency highlight poor identification of inputs. Correct answers emphasize mapping scope, resources, and constraints clearly. Compliance and blackout windows deserve careful attention. For instance, a financial system upgrade cannot occur during fiscal close, and certain industries impose regulatory hold points that must be built into schedules. External vendors may also provide their own calendars, which must be reconciled with internal plans. These constraints are not inconveniences, they are part of reality. Data-date discipline is also critical. Reports must consistently identify the point in time up to which actuals are measured. Linking assumptions to an assumption log ensures they are reviewed and updated. On the exam, distractors that treat assumptions as static are traps. Correct answers emphasize ongoing review and integration. Milestones give shape to the schedule by marking significant points in time. They may represent contractual delivery dates, governance reviews, or key handovers. Milestones are zero-duration markers that provide clarity for stakeholders without cluttering detail. Working and non-working time must also be set correctly. Failure to account for weekends, holidays, or shift schedules creates misleading forecasts. Resource assumptions are captured at this stage for later leveling or smoothing. This ensures that preliminary logic is grounded in resource reality rather than unlimited capacity. On the exam, distractors that assume resources always available highlight unrealistic modeling. Correct answers emphasize calendars and resource assumptions as integral to schedules. Resource assumptions deserve explicit recording. For example, if a specialist is assumed to be available full-time, but in reality they are shared across projects, schedule slippage is likely. By documenting these assumptions, project managers can revisit them during leveling or smoothing and adjust accordingly. PMI emphasizes that ignoring resource constraints produces fragile schedules that collapse under scrutiny. On the exam, stems about specialist unavailable but not reflected in plan highlight this risk. Correct answers emphasize recording and testing resource assumptions explicitly. This strengthens schedule credibility and prepares the team for realistic planning conversations. Estimating durations is another core step. 1-point estimates assign a single value to activity duration, while 3-point estimates account for uncertainty by defining optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic values. These estimates are often combined into expected durations using weighted averages. Reference classes and historical data provide reality checks by comparing planned durations to actuals from similar projects. Addressing optimism bias is critical. Teams often underestimate time required, assuming best-case scenarios. PMI stresses that estimates must be tied to acceptance criteria and the definition of done so that finished means truly complete. On the exam, correct answers emphasize transparency in assumptions. Historical data helps counter optimism bias. For example, if previous testing cycles averaged 3 weeks, a 1-week estimate without significant changes is suspect. Project managers use such comparisons to challenge assumptions and create more reliable durations. 3-point estimates also help communicate uncertainty, showing that durations are ranges rather than absolutes. This allows stakeholders to understand risk and plan contingencies. PMI emphasizes that estimating is not about precision, but about credibility. On the exam, distractors that suggest assume optimistic case are misleading. Correct answers emphasize data-driven, transparent estimates tied to quality standards. Tying estimates to acceptance criteria strengthens reliability. A task is not truly finished until it meets the definition of done, tested, reviewed, and accepted. Estimates must therefore include all steps required for true completion, not just initial work. For example, estimating development complete without including code review and testing leads to underestimation. By tying estimates to acceptance criteria, teams avoid hidden work. PMI emphasizes that estimates must account for full completion. On the exam, stems about deliverable accepted late due to missing review highlight this. Correct answers emphasize definitions of done and acceptance criteria in duration estimates. Once sequencing and durations are established, the project manager creates a schedule baseline. This baseline represents the approved plan for how the project will unfold over time. It must align with scope and cost baselines so that changes across one baseline cascade correctly into others. Without alignment, inconsistencies arise. Cost forecasts may assume different dates than schedule forecasts. PMI emphasizes that integration across baselines is essential for credibility. On the exam, distractors that suggest independent baselines with no synchronization are incorrect. Correct answers emphasize establishing and aligning a schedule baseline with other core baselines. Communicating the baseline requires using appropriate visuals for different audiences. Network diagrams reveal logic, showing how tasks connect and where critical paths emerge. These are useful for project teams and analysts. Gantt charts or timeline views provide clarity for stakeholders who prefer a more accessible format. Both serve important purposes: logic for analysis, timeline for communication. PMI stresses that tailoring visuals increases understanding and stakeholder confidence. On the exam, stems about stakeholder confusion due to technical diagrams highlight this. Correct answers emphasize using both logic-driven and stakeholder-friendly views to communicate the baseline. Schedules should also communicate uncertainty rather than promise false precision. Instead of saying, "This project will finish exactly on September 15th, a project manager may share an earliest finish window, such as between mid-September and early October. This range reflects uncertainty while still providing stakeholders with credible planning data. Communicating uncertainty openly builds trust and prevents disappointment later. PMI emphasizes that honesty about uncertainty is part of professional schedule management. On the exam, distractors that assume exact dates are always reliable are misleading. Correct answers emphasize ranges, forecasts, and early finish windows. In summary, building credible schedules requires careful attention to inputs, assumptions, sequencing, duration estimates, and baseline communication. Each step must be transparent, data-driven, and tied to real acceptance criteria. Schedules are not static. They are models that evolve as projects progress. PMI emphasizes visible logic, credible dates, and clear communication as the foundation. On the exam, pitfalls include hidden assumptions, unrealistic durations, and overpromising dates. Correct answers emphasize transparent modeling, integrated baselines, and honest communication of uncertainty. This toolkit ensures schedules are reliable enough to guide decisions and adaptable enough to withstand external change. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Controlling and forecasting schedules requires steady cadence and discipline. Project managers track not only completed work but also remaining durations and near-critical paths. The critical path represents the sequence of activities with zero flexibility, but near-critical paths, those with small amounts of float, can quickly become critical if delays occur. Forecasting must be updated on a clean data date, meaning all reports refer to the same as-of time. Without this, conflicting reports create confusion. Regular updates reveal slippage early and allow corrective action before deadlines collapse. On the exam, distractors that suggest, quote, "wait until major slippage" are wrong. Correct answers emphasize monitoring continuously and updating forecasts predictably with a focus on early detection. Schedule forecasts must be communicated before dates drift into crisis. A project manager who sees tasks slipping communicates impacts with options, rather than waiting until stakeholders discover problems. For example, if a key milestone appears to be slipping by 2 weeks, the PM presents choices: accept the delay, add resources, resequence work, or reduce scope. By showing impacts and trade-offs clearly, stakeholders can make informed decisions. PMI emphasizes that integration requires analysis before action. On the exam, stems about hiding slippage highlight weak governance. Correct answers emphasize analyzing, communicating options, and updating forecasts with transparency. Forecasting is not about perfection but about credibility. Project managers should avoid giving overly precise dates and instead focus on reliable ranges based on evidence. Communicating uncertainty openly prevents overcommitment. For example, saying, quote, "We expect completion between mid-July and early August," is more credible than promising July 15th with no buffer. Stakeholders appreciate transparency, especially when paired with clear reasoning. PMI stresses that credibility builds trust, which is more valuable than artificial certainty. On the exam, distractors that equate precision with accuracy are misleading. Correct answers emphasize forecasting with realistic ranges tied to actual performance trends and assumptions. Understanding network logic and float is essential for controlling schedules. A forward pass calculates the earliest start and finish of each activity, moving left to right through the network. A backward pass calculates the latest start and finish, moving right to left. The difference between the latest and earliest start, or between the latest and earliest finish, is called float. Total float represents the amount of time an activity can slip without affecting the project finish date. Activities with zero float make up the critical path. On the exam, stems about which activity controls project finish test this concept. Correct answers emphasize critical path analysis through forward and backward passes. Float analysis also identifies near critical paths. These are activities with very little float, perhaps 1 or 2 days. While not officially critical, they are dangerous because minor delays can push them onto the critical path. Project managers track these paths closely and protect them from risks. PMI emphasizes that protecting logic comes before compressing durations. Understanding where float exists allows managers to prioritize corrective action. On the exam, distractors that suggest ignore near critical are incomplete. Correct answers emphasize monitoring both critical and near critical paths, since both can threaten schedule predictability if left unattended. When schedules slip, compression techniques provide options. Crashing means adding resources to shorten duration, but it usually raises cost and sometimes risk. Fast-tracking means overlapping activities that were originally planned in sequence, which can reduce schedule length but increases the risk of rework. The project manager analyzes which option offers the least cost and least risk for the needed gain. PMI stresses that compression must follow impact analysis, not knee-jerk reaction. On the exam, distractors that suggest always crash or always fast-track are wrong. Correct answers emphasize analyzing both and choosing the least risk, least cost solution for the situation. Agile and hybrid projects approach scheduling differently but require the same discipline. Agile projects rely on cadence, backlog order, and velocity to predict dates. Velocity trends show how many items are completed per iteration, allowing forecasts for releases. Release planning often uses burn-up or burn-down charts to visualize progress toward goals. Cumulative flow diagrams, or CFDs, show how work is flowing and whether bottlenecks exist. PMI emphasizes that Agile does not eliminate schedule management, it simply shifts the artifacts. On the exam, distractors that suggest Agile has no schedule are misleading. Correct answers emphasize cadence, velocity, and flow metrics as schedule tools. Hybrid projects combine agile cadence with milestone expectations. Teams may run sprints to deliver increments, while mapping outcomes to predictive milestones for governance. The key is not breaking cadence. Agile teams maintain steady sprint length, while project managers map outcomes to phase gates. This translation keeps governance satisfied while preserving agile discipline. PMI stresses that hybrid requires bilingual reporting, both backlog and baseline. On the exam, stems about agile team disrupted by milestone reporting highlight poor tailoring. Correct answers emphasize respecting cadence while translating to milestone or phase views for stakeholders. Let's consider a scenario. A vendor delay threatens a milestone, and the team considers overlapping work to recover time. However, fast-tracking raises the risk of rework. The best next action is to analyze the path and available float, propose delivering a phased minimum viable product, selectively crash low-risk tasks, update the forecast, and seek approval. Communicating broadly ensures stakeholders understand options and trade-offs. PMI emphasizes that analysis precedes action, and partial delivery can preserve benefits while full completion follows. On the exam, distractors that suggest, quote, ignore vendor slip or fast-track everything are wrong. Correct answers emphasize analysis, options, and transparent communication. This scenario illustrates the importance of combining schedule logic with value thinking. Instead of rushing to protect every deliverable, project managers focus on delivering slices of value on time, even if lower priority elements are delayed. By sequencing to protect benefits, credibility is maintained. Selective compression, such as crashing low-risk tasks, reduces cost and risk compared to blanket approaches. PMI emphasizes that project managers must balance urgency with discipline. On the exam, stems about, quote, protecting dates without analysis test this principle. Correct answers emphasize impact analysis, phased delivery, and careful selection of compression tactics. Exam pitfalls in schedule management are well known. One is making date promises without logic, providing stakeholders with unsupported commitments. Another is rebaselining first rather than last, skipping impact analysis and governance approval. A third is hiding leads and lags, creating opaque dependencies. These mistakes undermine credibility and confuse stakeholders. PMI emphasizes that disciplined schedule management avoids these traps through visible logic, consistent baselines, and transparent change paths. On the exam, distractors that embody these pitfalls are common. Correct answers emphasize modeling before promises, analysis before baselining, and visibility before change. A quick playbook for schedule management begins with modeling logic carefully. Sequence activities with dependencies, leads, and lags. Next, estimate durations honestly, using historical data and tying estimates to acceptance criteria. Establish baselines aligned with scope and cost, and communicate them through appropriate visuals. Monitor performance by tracking actuals, remaining durations, and near-critical paths. When slippage occurs, analyze first, then compress with the least risk, least cost method. Communicate forecasts honestly, using ranges or earliest finish windows. Finally, maintain clean data dates, synchronize baselines, and update stakeholders predictably. On the exam, correct answers echo this rhythm rather than shortcuts or promises without analysis. In summary, the Schedule Management Toolkit ensures credible, defendable dates by emphasizing visible logic, realistic estimates, and disciplined forecasting. It reinforces math concepts like float and compression while adapting tools for agile, predictive, and hybrid environments. PMI emphasizes that schedule management is not about rigid dates, but about credible models that guide decision-making. Pitfalls like unsupported promises, premature rebaselining, or hidden dependencies undermine trust. Correct answers highlight logic, transparency, and analysis before action. A well-managed schedule gives the project its heartbeat steady, predictable, and credible, enabling value delivery with confidence. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.